Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Friday's show. Up first on the hazardous weather graphics, there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out for tonight and tomorrow. Anywhere around the state, here over the interior, watch, warning, advisory free. Also for the Panhandle, Kodiak Island, and Bristol Bay area in the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the Aleutians and Bering Sea, and it'll probably stay that way through the weekend. And so moving on to satellite imagery, you can see storm system here winding up southwest of the Panhandle, that front spreading wind and rain into the southern southeast coast today in the afternoon here, and a little bit drier up to the north. Big area of clouds here, of mid and high level clouds, a few breaks over the Copper River Basin, but basically cloudy skies, some areas of light precipitation in this. Valdez picked up an inch or so of snow, and also some rain and snow in Turnagain Arm, Portage, and areas of the Kenai Peninsula. Had some scattered showers today on up along the Alaska Range as well. Then pretty good conditions up over the northern interior areas, but some light snow up along the eastern Brooks Range, very light snow to the Kaktovik-Barter Island area. Out over the Bering Sea, a fair amount of clearing taking place over St. Lawrence Island from the Chukchi Sea as high pressure develops out here. And those northerly winds pretty gusty along the southwest coast, but that pushing the clouds now farther south and almost clearing out there over the Pribilofs. And then snow showers continuing to fall over the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. While out to the west, the next front here, not all that strong, but holding together enough to bring some rain into the western Aleutians. Kind of about ready to split right through here, kind of a new development just north of Shemya taking place, but that's a very weak system out there, really not much in the way of any heavy wind or rain with it, just in the light categories on both counts. And rolling this through again, you can see continued lot of low clouds here, slowly shifting southward over the Bering Sea, with high pressure developing here over the northwest Bering, kind of ridging southward in toward the eastern Aleutians today. On the chart, there's that front out in this area, kind of a new low starting to develop here right along the triple point of the frontal system here. And but that's quite weak, some light rain with that, or light snow in advance of the front there. Otherwise, drying out here over Adak and Atka today, but still a lot of clouds in those areas. And then also that northerly wind flow with high pressure over the Russian Far East, beginning to push those clouds southward, but still picking up enough moisture here to produce some snow showers, mostly south of the Pribilofs now, extending down to the eastern Aleutians. Gusty north winds, snow showers along the Alaska Peninsula today. Winds anywhere from 20 to 30 miles an hour sustained, some higher gusts, possibly up to 40 miles an hour in some areas. A little breezy, but not too bad here. Gust 30, 35 miles an hour St. Lawrence Island earlier today. And just areas of sunshine with pretty dry conditions here over the western part of the state, right up to the Seward Peninsula and into the northwest interior areas, western Brooks Range, Arctic coast, basically dry. A few flurries over toward Barter Island into Arctic Village, and then some widely scattered to isolated snow showers here in the interior, a little bit more widespread right through this area in the central interior, down in toward western Cook Inlet, basically easterly flow here, keeping it dry western or eastern Cook Inlet here in the Kenai Peninsula, with the snow showers in the upslope areas of the western Alaska Range. Basically dry in the Copper River Basin, but scattered rain and snow showers today. North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound area had some snow That was up to moderate snow earlier today at Homer, and some snow showers for Kodiak Island, mostly on the eastern side of the island there, and wind and rain pushing up into the panhandle of this frontal system, still off the coast, still west of the Queen Charlotte's. The low's quite a ways off to the southwest. We'll see tonight. That low doesn't move too much, inches its way east-northeastward there a little bit, but the front does swing in, so I'll bring some solid rain this evening and overnight tonight to the southern area, spreading slowly northward, but be drier up Lynn Canal, probably staying dry, maybe Haines northward to Skagway, may escape precipitation through the night tonight, drying out over the North Gulf Coast and the Copper River Basin area, as well as south central Alaska. Still a chance of snow showers southern Cook Inlet into Kodiak Island and across much of the southwest interior, especially Bristol Bay and along the Alaska Range. Scattered isolated snow showers over the eastern interior, basically high pressure there on the north slope keeps winds light and conditions dry for much of the Arctic coast, especially south of the western Brooks Range here, from Fairmount clearing continuing for the Kobuk, Selawik valleys, northwest coast, Kivalina, Point Hope, and the western Arctic coast. Just some variable clouds over the northern Bering Sea with slowly diminishing winds. Winds will also slowly diminish for the eastern Aleutians, and the western Alaska Peninsula stays a little breezy here for the Bristol Bay area and Kodiak Island as well. And then that next front, weak low here develops, only 1,025 millibars, definitely quite weak, and that'll push the chance of rain in toward the central Aleutians during the night tonight, but amounts will be quite light, and wind's not really a factor at all with that, as basically high pressure continues to dominate the northern and central Bering Sea areas. And for tomorrow, high pressure over the Bering Sea, so dry conditions, light winds out this way, a little bit of moisture in the form of showers of rain or snow for the central Aleutians, could be mostly sunny for the eastern Aleutian areas. Could see some sun for the Pribilofs as well with light winds. Still pretty gusty winds here down across Bristol Bay. Cold air continues to pour out of the interior, and that'll pick up moisture in the form of snow and drop it along the Alaska Peninsula into northeast Bristol Bay. Chance of rain and snow for Kodiak Island. More showery conditions there. Should be a dry day tomorrow. Some sunshine over south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula into Cook Inlet, and then a very weak trough right through here will kick off some snow showers through that area. And there's a chance of snow showers anywhere over the eastern and northeast interior, mostly north of the Alaska Range. And then rain and snow becomes showery in the afternoon over the Panhandle, but stays mostly cloudy. And then we'll see for Sunday, that low really weakens. Another system develops, moves up toward the Queen Charlotte's. The trough of that will increase the rain and snow chances over the southern Panhandle, really scattering out to the north, becoming mostly dry, and that'll extend into the North Gulf Coast. A very weak trough sliding eastward, mostly in the upper air, will kick off some snow shower activity over the Kenai Peninsula, mostly in mountainous terrain on up into the Talkeetnas, maybe the Chugach Mountains, as well as areas of the western Alaska Range here, possibly as far south as the Aleutian Range, but mostly sunny skies. Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta into Bristol Bay up to the Seward Peninsula. Eastern interior, cloudy skies with areas of light snow or snow showers. Chances anywhere from the eastern Arctic coast right down into the Tanana Valley to the Alaska Range, but nothing significant expected in those areas. Pretty light. And high pressure, light winds here over the Bering Sea with a fair amount of clearing all the way down to the eastern Aleutians. Probably be some clouds in here, but definitely dry with light winds. Just a chance of some shower activity over the western Aleutians. This front stays to the south and the one out there stays to the west. So looking at low temperatures for tonight, mid-teens over the Copper River Basin. Otherwise in the 20s here for south central Alaska. Kenai Peninsula, upper 20s, lower 30s for the lows. Upper 20s Kodiak Island, and 10 to 15 Bristol Bay. Same thing for the Kuskokwim Valley, lows about 10 to 15. Southeast coast, anywhere from the upper 20s to near 40s for the overnight low. And then for the highs tomorrow, 40s, mid-40s, mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, pushing lower 50s there. Finally, some 50s showing up on these charts there. That's mostly Haines up to Skagway. 40s here, much of south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, Kodiak Island, and a little cooler here west of the Alaska Range, highs 30 to 35, followed by high lows 5 to 15. Kuskokwim Valley 15 to 20. Bristol Bay lows mid to upper 20s. South Central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula mid 30s. Kodiak Island lower 30s for Homer, and lows mostly in the upper 30s for the Panhandle, followed by highs again upper 40s to lower 50s here for the southeast coast. Lower 40s Copper River Basin, 40 to 45. Call it for South Central Alaska on Sunday afternoon. Near 40 for Kodiak Island, 20s west of the Alaska Range. Lows tonight staying above zero here in the Tanana Valley. Northern valleys, Kobuk valleys below zero, 5 to 10 below, and then 10 to 20 below for the north slope to the Arctic coast, followed by highs up into the lower 30s around Fairbanks, maybe 35 over toward Northway and Tok. Near or below zero from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, 5 to 15 for the highs for the St. Lawrence Island area and Seward Peninsula. Lows the following morning, mid-teens in the Fairbanks area, colder out to the west, definitely colder up to the north. That'll be followed by highs in the 20s, so a low cool down from what you'll see tomorrow here over the mid and upper Tanana Valley, but right around zero to above zero north slope and to the Arctic coast. Out to the west, near zero for the lows tonight, upper teens for the Pribilofs, otherwise 20s to mid-30s for the Aleutians. Highs, upper 30s, lower 40s. Central Aleutians, lower 30s, upper 20s for the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather, IFR here, coming into the southwest Bering Sea and then back down across Kiska on out to the west. Otherwise, northern Bering Sea right up into the Chukchi Sea, VFR, Nunivak Island, Yukon Delta, then marginal VFR here, southern Bering Sea and central eastern Aleutians, and pretty good area here right up into southwest interior Alaska, then some breaks here over the central interior. Brooks Range on out to the north, IFR. More VFR here, Prince William Sound into the North Gulf Coast, including Yakutat, but the Panhandle starting the day out with a lot of marginal VFR. We'll see that holds through the day Saturday through the afternoon. So a marginal VFR kind of day there. Areas of marginal VFR now along the mountainous terrain, Alaska Range here, and then back down into the Kuskokwim Valley on down the Kuskokwim River right to almost the bay there. Otherwise, north and south of that area, good VFR, but and marginal VFR holding for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Also here over the northeast interior on out to the eastern Arctic coast. And then for the Sunday morning forecast, IFR back in the picture here, north of the Alaska Range, north and northwest of the range here, so right across Nenana, Fairbanks, mid and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, up to about Eagle there, and into the southern Yukon uplands, and also for the Brooks Range out to the central eastern Arctic coast, IFR as well. Stays marginal for the Panhandle, Kodiak Island VFR. Notice VFR now up into Cook Inlet in the Susitna Valley. And good VFR here, southeast Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs. Marginal VFR now over the northern Bering Sea through the strait there and part of the Seward Peninsula. Some IFR way out west. Doesn't do much, actually shifts northward, so a little bit of improvement out there in the afternoon. Otherwise, marginal VFR to about Adak, eastern Bering Sea, good VFR, Pribilofs right up to St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, eastern Aleutians, Bristol Bay to Kodiak Island. Some marginal VFR here in the afternoon Sunday on the east side of Kodiak, Fognak Island, maybe up into the southern and eastern Kenai Peninsula into the Talkeetna Mountains, but showing a pretty good area of marginal VFR here over the central and eastern part of the state, all the way up to the Arctic coast, Panhandle, VFR, North Gulf Coast, VFR, as well as Prince William Sound. And for passes, Anatuvik, mostly marginal conditions expected on Saturday, first day of the weekend, about the same for Adigan as well. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out marginal VFR becoming VFR, hopefully by mid or late morning on, and same forecast for rainy, windy, same thing, starting out marginal, becoming VFR, or just kind of bouncing back and forth there. Isabel, VFR, and Mentasta, VFR, same forecast for Tanita, good VFR, either approach, Portage, VFR, Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here, right up along the southeast coast, and then at the surface, hugging the North Gulf Coast for tomorrow morning, down along Kodiak Island, and then right near False Pass there, just north of the Aleutians, 2,000 to 4,000 feet out over the western Aleutians. And icing, really nothing of any significance over the Bering Sea Aleutians or much interior Alaska. Best chance will be for some isolated moderate rime icing here across the southeast coast, extending westward across the Gulf of Alaska, and kind of an elevated threat will extend into Kodiak Island as well. But icing free everywhere else. And for the jet stream, well south of mainland Alaska still, kind of angling back up at 90 knots, cutting just south of the Queen Charlotte's. Northerlies 80 knots here through the Bering Strait, and 100 knots out of the northwest there over the southern Bering Sea to the eastern Aleutians. And for 9,000 feet, 50 knots south winds due to this low here coming into the eastern Gulf of Alaska. East 35 knots from the North Gulf Coast. North 35 knots there, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Light over the interior, and high pressure keeping winds light out here over the Bering Sea. North 40 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and south turn east-southeast and pick up to about 50 knots here just south of Yakutat. So going into the turbulence for tomorrow, look for moderate turbulence here for the Panhandle up to about Yakutat, southwest interior into Bristol Bay, as well as the Alaska Peninsula to possibly Unalaska Island. Otherwise, pretty smooth elsewhere. And after the break, I'll be back with a marine forecast.
See every aspect of what Weather Service does up here in Alaska. The ice breakup in the inland waterways. When the ice backs up, you get flooding. We work hard with the native population to try to prevent the impacts of that flooding.
Good morning, AKwx. This is the Riverwatch flying over the village right now.
Good morning. How's the old river doing?
This is upstream of the village where the ice will jam, and there's no current to push anything past the village.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, so we've been flying the river over the past week or so. You know, coming into this, it was looking like the lower rivers mushing out. And what I mean by the lower river is from Tuluksak on down. And that's what we thought was going to happen, you know, just based on talking to folks about the winter you had here. And then upstream of that, we still have, you know, some good in-place ice up through the Okauskag, through the Aniak area. But really the main ice that we're looking at is the ice that's upriver, you know, in the Crooked Creek and Slate Mute area.
So what does this cold weather mean for breakup?
It means that breakup is going to take a little bit longer. I realize that people are, you know, impatient to get on with summer, and I know that the birds are in and people want the ice to be gone in order to commence summer, and I totally get it.
People use the river for transportation throughout both the winter and the summer. So in the winter that they have ice roads, and those are able to connect villages to Bethel and villages to each other. And then in the summer, people use the Kuskokwim River as transportation in boats.
During breakup, they're stuck. Once the ice gets too thin to get on, the snow's melted, can't go anywhere except by airplane, which is really expensive. And so you find that people are anxiously waiting for the ice to go out.
Each year we try to classify or try to describe through our outlooks and during the process whether the river is going to break up thermally, where the ice just melts in place, or whether it may break up dynamically. And that's where there's a strong push from snowmelt into intact, hard, strong ice, and that's when we see ice jams.
As part of Riverwatch, the Alaska Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management works very closely with the National Weather Service, and we partner up out here. There'll be a hydrologist and an emergency manager, and we'll fly the river daily, looking at ice conditions and checking in with local communities. Often oftentimes, as it allows, we land in the communities and meet with community leaders to discuss their flooding preparedness plans and other general emergency management information.
It's a partnership that we've developed over the years that works together seamlessly. We begin, I think we probably begin talking about it in early March, and then the execution phase comes in late April and May when we're actually flying.
So we're sort of the eyes of the villages, and by using the VHF radio to communicate with them, as we fly by, we can tell them, what those conditions are.
In the Weather Forecast Office, we are responsible for issuing the watches and the warnings and the advisories for the ice jam floods that can occur. Coordinate with the River Forecast Center and with the River Watch team in order to get the best information possible so we can issue these watches and warnings and advisories.
You see one NOAA in Alaska like nowhere else, and I've told every administrator since I've been coming up here that very fact. They work closely together. They work closely with their partners in the community, the DOD, the state, the local community, and the native population. It benefits that community because they're getting the expertise that resides here in the River Forecast Center, but it helps us by getting their knowledge and getting their expertise and experience and translating that into the services we provide.
We invited Dennis to come up in the plane with us to not only, have him see for himself what the ice conditions are and maybe what that threat, potential is for flooding here in Crooked Creek, but also to give us a sense of place in this part of the Kuskokwim.
It's really nice to be able to get to talk to people and talk to people who might be affected, who are being affected directly, and just really appreciate the tight-knit network of people on the Kuskokwim River.
We needed to know what it's like out there, to learn it and to prepare for it. I used to try to let people know that, it's going to break at a certain time, but I kind of quit doing that. I'd rather just enjoy it the way it is.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Moving on to the marine forecast. Small craft advisories along the coast here. In the south coast, winds will be southeast at 25 knots for Saturday, and east winds 15 to 20 knots. 15 to 25 knots for the north coast. Lynn Canal, northeast breeze at 10 knots with 3-foot seas. North at 10 knots with 2-foot seas for Stevens Passage. And Clarence Strait, small craft advisories. Southeast winds 25 knots, seas near 10 feet. And for the day Sunday, there we go. Lighter winds here along the coast. South coast looking at east-southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. North coast, east winds 15 knots, seas 6 to 8 feet. North winds at 10 knots. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Stevens Passage. Seas down to about 2 feet, and southeast breeze at 15 knots for Clarence Strait with 4-foot seas. Prince William Sound into the North Gulf Coast. Winds north 15 knots for Saturday, and small craft advisories for the Barren Islands. Kamishak Bay, north to northwest winds there at 25 knots. Cook Inlet, north winds 15 to 20 knots. And for Sunday, no change for Cook Inlet, north winds 15 to 20 knots, but gale warnings back into the picture here for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands for the north-northwest winds there at 35 knots. And for the North Gulf Coast, north winds 20 knots, seas 9 feet. Prince William Sound, north winds 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Kodiak Island, northwest winds 25 knots, seas 5 feet for Saturday. Gale warnings on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula from Cape Sarachef all the way up to Sitkinak Island for northwest winds at 35 knots. And northwest winds 30 knots for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula with 10 to 12-foot seas there. In Bristol Bay, northwest winds 25 knots. And for Sunday, Alaska Peninsula, Northwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Bristol Bay northwest at 25, and Kodiak Island winds will be northwest at 30 knots. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, Frontenac Island northwest at 15 knots, Unalaska Island northwest at 30 knots, and under a ridge of high pressure, light variable winds for Adak and Atka, call it 10 knots with seas to 3 to 4 feet, and variable winds 10 to 15 knots for the Western Aleutians. And then for Sunday, bring some wind back into the picture here. East winds 30 knots for the Western Aleutians, seas building to 17 feet, and 25-knot easterly winds for the Adak-Atka area. And for the Fox Islands, north to northeast winds 20 to 30 knots, with seas 5 to 9 feet. And for the southwest coast, north to northwest winds 25 to 30 knots for the day Saturday, and north at 20 there for the Pribilof Islands, north 20 knots for St. Matthew Island. And for the Yukon Delta coast, north winds 25 knots. St. Lawrence Island looking at a north wind at about 20 knots. And for Sunday, northwest winds for Norton Sound, Yukon Delta coast, and St. Lawrence Island, all at 15 knots. Still some brisk wind advisories for the area south of Nunivak Island at about 25 knots there from the northwest. West 20 knots for St. Matthew Island, Pribilofs. Northwest winds 15 knots, seas 5 feet. And up along the Arctic coast tomorrow here on the east side, pretty light winds out of the northeast at 5 to 10 knots. And the western Arctic coast, north winds 5 to 10 knots, and the Chukchi Sea, 15 to 25 knot winds from the north. And then for the day on Sunday, basically 10 knot winds here from varying directions for the central and eastern Arctic coast. Really light winds on the western Arctic coast, only 5 knots, and north to northwest winds 15 knots from Cape Beaufort down to Wales. For tonight again, fair and dry, high pressure dominating the northern Bering Sea into the northwest interior. Just a chance of some snow showers along the Alaska Range and into the southwest interior here, especially along the Alaska Peninsula. Light rain with this weak system pushing in toward the central Aleutians, and some pretty good rain and gusty winds into the Panhandle, mostly over the central and southern areas, lighter amounts to the north. And then for tomorrow, that moisture spreads northward with the front moving inland, so conditions become more showery, especially in the afternoon for the southern Panhandle. And not too bad, mostly dry, Prince William Sound, south central Alaska with some sunshine, sun breaks, and some rain and snow showers for Kodiak, Alaska. Chance of snow eastern interior, dry in the west, still some gusty winds, especially along the Alaska Peninsula. And then those shift eastward on Sunday. And that's all I've got time for.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.